A few videos going around of people voting during the Iowa caucuses that were held earlier this week has raised some eyebrows. So that video was captioned by WFAA senior reporter Jason Whiteley, who said voters jotted their candidates down a sheet of paper before they were all collected in a brown grocery bag. Because that's how voting is done in the 21st century, apparently, at least in Iowa, and unfortunately many of the other states as well. Now, there's another video posted by WISN political director Matt Smith that showed a similar scene.
Just fold it in half, and we will come and collect them.
Naturally, some people online were a bit curious as to how the party of election security is able to run their elections out of a Hy-Vee paper bag. Seems like it could be open to some security flaws in that. I'm just saying, right? Now, even funnier is the fact that Iowa Republicans have embraced the idea of same-day registration in their caucuses. In fact, on the website, the Republican Party of Iowa informs caucus goers, if you're not a registered voter or a registered Republican, that's okay. Just be prepared to register in person at your caucus location on caucus night. And they remind you to bring your valid form of ID, proof of address, all that. So I guess that's where their security measures begin, okay? Now, one thing that is not a valid ID that I've noticed is a student ID. Very interesting. That said, you saw the videos. No one in either of those rooms looks under 50, just to be fair. Look, speaking of the people that were there, another thing a lot of people on social media notice is that that is the whitest room they've ever seen. The only thing of color in that room is the paper bag. All right, that tells you a lot about the Iowa Republican Party, the Iowa caucuses. Now, of course, the reaction here to these videos goes from mocking to pointing out the massive hypocrisy of the entire process, which again doesn't seem all that secure. In fact, one person says, this is what the Republicans consider a safe and secure election? Weird how this crowd that is notoriously suspicious of improper voting procedures is cool with this method, and no one seems to be questioning the outcome, wrote Brian Hastert, who hosts the Local Selection podcast about state and municipal elections and governance. Another said, this is how the greatest country on earth elects its most powerful person in the world? High school student government elections are more sophisticated than this. It's true. Another called it the old write a name on a piece of paper and put it in a grocery bag method that wouldn't fly in a second grade vote for lunch line monitor. Look, so in my view, the fact that this is how Iowa chooses its nominee is why I don't think Iowa, or any caucus for that matter, should be as important as it is. Seems rather undemocratic to me when you have a small group of people. I know the idea is supposed to be democratic. You get everybody in a room and they cast their ballots and all that. It's in plain view and all that stuff. Look at the transparency and all. But it doesn't turn out that way. In fact, it's very exclusive. And in reality, the reason that Iowa is so important is because mainstream media and the candidates. As Vox noted, the candidates are in large part judged by whether their caucus performance in Iowa meets the expectation of the media and political elites. So you see that what's supposed to be a democratic, a democratic caucus, not Democratic Party. I mean, just like as in democracy. That's supposed to be, more of a democratic way of choosing your nominee, but it ends up being judged by political elites to see who goes on to win other primaries and caucuses in the nomination process. So really, a lot of this is controlled by parties, by the media. Again, doesn't sound like that much of a democratic process to me. It sounds actually more like a tiny group of hardcore partisans, because that's who goes to these caucuses in a very white state with very few delegates, stuffing votes into a paper bag, because that's what happened. How is that supposed to represent how the country's going to vote? But it doesn't. There's all sorts of problems with this system. Okay? And it's not, and again, it's because it's not at all democratic. There is a lack of transparency. There's a lot of barriers to participation. People are required to be there for hours, meaning that if you've got a job, if you've got childcare, if you don't have somebody to watch your kids, you ain't going to be there. You ain't going to be able to partake in this process. That's why you see a lot of older white Americans. That's generally who goes to the caucuses, the most partisan of them and the most retired. Not all of them, of course. People who are lucky enough to get time off of work, they're the ones that are going to be able to be there to choose that party's nominee, who again would be one of the choices to end up becoming the most powerful person in the world. That needs major reform. Major reform. There's no system to do absentee ballots in these caucuses, nothing like that. It's not a good system. Needs to change, and videos like this remind us why it needs to change.